This is a video about grief. And I don't want it to come off as like a super negative thing. I want to talk about loss in a really, upfront, open way. We've lost 3 dogs here at Mantis Manor in so many years. We lost Esper in 2022, and then last year we lost both Joy and Vladimir. And I want to talk about how each death is different and how we've been able to move through that in a healthy way. And look, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not anything, no authority. I just want to explain from my circumstances what has helped me. Because it's been a really crap few years. And as far as that's concerned, everything else is fine. I mean, we did get Sabin. Here's our new puppy. So it's like an introduction sort of exit video all at the same time. So one thing I do want to talk about is I think that grief and tragedy has changed significantly in the time of cell phones. I'm not saying that like, I don't know, I don't want to sound like I'm dated, but when a pet dies or a person dies nowadays, you have so many photos and videos and memories of them in perfect fidelity. I mean, the amount of stuff I still have of Esper from when we first got her in 2013 is just incredible. And in a lot of ways, in general, that makes things, I guess, harder, at least at the start. But then once you've moved through your grief, you're so appreciative that you have those memories saved. And that's one thing. It was so hard in the beginning. It still is when you see a photo of someone or something that has passed. But it ends up being a beautiful thing. Trust me. The biggest part about grief, at least for me, was I had to learn how to forgive myself and absolve myself of any guilt around circumstances when my dogs were alive. And I think you can apply this to anything. And there have been studies. The loss of a pet can be as hard as a loss of a family member. It can be, and I know it can be. But that's the first step, or was the first step. You kind of have to say, at least I did for myself, I did the best that I could. I gave them the best life that they could. And, use that for positive in a way where you start to appreciate the moments you have with your pets and your family a little bit more. So the way that I took the grief process and turned it into a positive thing was I really tried to appreciate every moment, even right now with you guys, just a little bit more. And that really seemed to help. Once I said, there's everything, I got rid of everything I could. And now I want to talk about, this can get kind of gruesome. I'm going to get very specific about each one of my dog's deaths. We'll start with Esper. We'll see if I can make it through this. She passed away in 2022. She was only 8 years old, and her death was a tragedy. She died of a heart attack. She let out a horrific scream and died in my arms. And I did what I could to revive her. We drove ourselves to the vet office, and by the time that we got there, she had been long dead. There's absolutely nothing that they could have done. That death is a tragedy. No one saw that coming. She had a vet visit about the week before, and she was perfectly fine. And it reminds you that you really don't know what the next day will bring. Now, with Esper, I was completely destroyed. The shock of it, the shock of the loss alone was enough to numb me for a good year. I didn't process the events around it. I didn't process carrying her lifeless body to the car. I didn't process any of that for months. And, it really, if I ever almost quit social media and quit everything in my life, it was then. It was real close. So I think about it like the grief with a tragedy like that is built up into one moment. It explodes out in one tragic moment. You don't see it coming. You're blindsided by it. It's a shock. It's like a numb, it's like an anime where they go to black and white. Like it's the freaking moment where you just think nothing is going to get better. The healing from that is like cutting a plant back at the roots. It takes a full season for it to come back, and you find a lot of healthier paths through it. And it took a while, but I was able to, go back and look at videos and appreciate my life with her, eventually. It took a while. Now, with Joy had a degenerative myelopathy. She had a disease where she was slowly dying. And we knew for years this is an incurable disease. There was nothing you could do. So the grief process sort of starts when you're aware that the end is coming. And I don't think it's easier. I say that a tragic death, it all comes out at once. With a death like Joy, you're confronted with it every day. You grieve every day. The only healthy iteration of that is to say, I appreciated the moments I had with her before she passed a little bit more, because you saw it coming. Things are easier to deal with sometimes when you see them coming, but when such an absolute like death, it can be terrifying, because you're wondering when. And as a pet owner, you want to make sure you balance a dog's healthy life with their suffering, and you make sure that they don't suffer. And we really did our best with Joy. Once she started losing faculty and was unable to walk, and her lungs were starting to be affected, we knew it was time. That was a tough one for, she was a rescue. She had a really hard life, and that was a tough one, thinking that we really wanted her to go with some of her dignity. And she did. In the last death, Vladimir is somewhere in between the two. He's an old guy. He was 11 and a half. He had a litany of health problems. He had valley fever, which disseminated to the rest of his body, that we had to have him on antifungals for his entire life. He one time got kicked in the head by a horse and was unconscious for 2 days. We thought he was going to die. He ran off. He's been gone for 24 hours. Like the dog had 9 lives. And he even had, his hork noises. Everybody loves his hork noises. We thought that was going to be something more serious, but that was a laryngeal paralysis. So as dog gets older, the cartilage in their neck kind of opens up, and it makes it so sometimes when they're eating or barking, they just get the urge to cough. Now, so he was old, so we saw his passing coming. But, it was still hard with Vladimir. Damn, I'm starting to tear up. It was still hard with Vladimir because he seemed so mentally capable, even though his physical body was giving up on him. And we saw it coming. A little harder for him to get up. He wasn't doing as much exercise. His eating was fine. He really only had about a week where we all kind of went, okay, I think the end is coming. And this is weird to say. And having so many dogs through so many years and talking to my parents about this and people who own pets, I genuinely feel like when a dog, when their time is there, they have a very specific way that they look at you. It's not negative. It's not positive. It's kind of like I'm done. And Vlad had one bad day, and we realized that he was losing he was dwindling very quickly. The only thing easy about his death was that when we got to the vet, they were like, there's nothing you can do. He had things going wrong. I think his heart was failing. There's all kinds of things that he was not going to recover from, and there was no option for treatment. So I do say, and I do say, and it might be anecdotal, but the last day with him, this is funny, and I'll talk about this. A lot of people say before a dog or a pet passes, even human beings, they have like a few days or a week where they're just like great. And you're like, oh, wow, this is like they've turned a corner. And with Vlad, he was on a new meds for his arthritis, and his teeth were looking great. We're like, he's on such a great path. And then, wah, wah. And I think that sometimes, it's like a last hurrah sort of thing. And you're surrounded by memories and moments and items and collars and bones and food and sounds, and it's so hard to move past those sorts of things, because then you feel guilty about moving past, and you feel guilty about getting a new dog, and it's so funny how much crap human beings push on themselves regarding grief. We feel guilty about not feeling bad enough. We feel guilty about not feeling bad. We feel that we need to honor the dead in a certain way, and then we feel like we don't know what they would have wanted. There's so much guilt built up with that I think that the most important thing, at least what I've learned through all of these three processes, you have to be kind to yourself as you go into it. You have to be kind to yourself and absolve yourself as of much guilt as you can. I think that's it. I've said this before. Anybody who's going through it and they think that I can help you, just shoot me a DM, talk to me. I know it's tough. I really do. But the manner will prevail, and we will continue making videos and content, and I will see you guys on the interwebs.